There's a few things that have changed, and I have a few tips that I would give myself if I wanted to jumpstart uh, my career as a beat maker and to get faster to where I'm at today. Um, so these are the 5 things that I would tell myself to start doing straight away. The first tip would be to just make simple drum patterns. All right, just make simple drum patterns. And that is because I used to try a lot and I would just create this really intricate patterns with kicks and snares and hi-hats. And I wanted to be original. But as I got further down the line, I just understood that you're not going to reinvent hip hop. It's just what it is. And hip hop comes with a very simple formula. If you follow it, you'll get things done. Of course, you can shape it a little bit to make your own sound out of it. But the formula of hip hop, especially drums, is quite simple. It's just a steady hi-hat, a steady snare, and then the kick plays around a little bit. And that's what hip hop is. And when I started, I kind of wanted to do too much with the hi-hats, too much with the kicks and the snares. Everything was all over the place, volume, I didn't pay attention to that. So one of the things that I would tell myself nowadays is just to create simple drum patterns. I want to show you this track that I did for my latest album, Jenga, and this is the track named Jenga after the album. So I just want you to have a look at the drum loop that I did here. It's a very simple drum loop, and I've kind of been using this for a long time. This idea of just working with very simple drum loops. So I'll play you the drum loop. Sometimes the best thing that you need is just a simple drum loop that just carries, that has groove and just carries the beat. That's what it needs to do. Sometimes it doesn't need to be complex or anything. It just needs to be steady, grooving, and just carrying the beat from beginning to end. That's all it is. I'll let you hear it with the samples. Jumping on to the next tip, and that is don't use effects. Just worry about making everything work with volume. It's so important and it's so overlooked. That's another problem that I had back then was just, I was trying to fix the mix by using effects like EQs, compressors, whatever I was trying to use to just change the sound or whatever was wrong in the mix, because I didn't know what to do, obviously, because you're starting, you don't know why things are wrong, why they don't sound a certain way. Nowadays, looking back, most of the times the issues that I had was just poor choice when it gets to drums and just not mixing the volumes correctly. So I would just go back and tell myself, hey, just use volume first, make your music, make your drums, and then when you get to the mix of things, just use volume, right? Don't try to add compression, EQ, and none of that. Just try to fix everything with volume. Try that, and if that doesn't work, then you can add some effects to help you fix whatever's wrong with the mix. On my individual hits, like that's the kick, that's the snare, that's the hi-hat, I have absolutely nothing in there, just volume. I'm just using volume. For the entire drum program, I've used the filter. That's purely just taking out some of the highs. These are my the roads that I recorded. It's the same sample but with a filter. Again, I'm just using a filter right here. That's it. All my projects are standard like this. I barely use any effects at all. I try to do everything just with volume, okay, and filters. When I need to use a filter, if I don't need to use it, I won't use any filter. I can keep going. That's the bass. There's nothing on my bass chain right here. If I go into the program, there's nothing here cutting. There's nothing here cutting. So that's how I recorded the bass. That's the bass. I just leveled it. I put it in the right level, and that was it. Tip number 4 is start with your drums. If I had to go back, I would tell myself, start with the drums. Don't start with the samples. I love starting with the drums. So I have a drum loop going. It's much easier for me just to now get samples. I can go and browse for any samples. Okay, I can come here and browse for anything. Doesn't matter. I'll load that program up. Let's see what I have. There we go. We need to lower the level of that. Let me put the program into mono so I can play with these chops. I just love having that drum loop to start so I can play around with my samples and just find places to put my samples. Much easier to have something going for you to introduce cuts, and at least for me it is. Okay, jumping on to another one, and this is kind of part of the same tip number 2. Tip number 3 is related, which is make room for the drums. One of the things that I learned is that if my samples are lower than the drums, it makes the drums pop out a bit more, and it gives it that really punchy sound of the drums. Notice that when I was making this, I didn't let the samples be up there with the sound of the drums. It doesn't make sense to do that. You have to make room for the drums. So these samples need to come way down for the drums to actually take effect. So always leave room for the drums to knock. They need to be up front. If you put the samples too loud, it just takes away from that drum pressure that it keeps kicking in. Started my beats with drum loops. I started to spend more time just making sure that I was getting like a nice swing, I was getting a nice groove and all of that. So I would spend more time, designing a nice drum loop. And that's when I really understood as well that tip number 1, simple patterns always work better. And I understood a lot of stuff once I started to make drum loops first and then inserting the samples. So I would spend a lot of time just crafting these drum loops, and then whenever I put a sample on top of it, it would work straight away. Because I would find a bunch of different pockets for the cuts, for the samples, and second, I would understand the dynamic between the sample and the drums. I noticed that the sample works really well if I lower it in volume, because the drums are playing really well. So that's what and now that I have this drum loop going and the drums are working really well, I don't want a sample that's going to just, go like on top of the drum and just put the drums in the back, right? No, I want the drums to stay in the front, and I want just the sample just to kind of be in the back, just to create some hypnotic movement, something like that. And that's it. That's how I kind of got into this sound that I have now. Now let's get into another thing that I think is very important for the sound that I make nowadays, and that is compression. So I'll go back and tell myself, just study compression a lot, and especially study compression on the outputs. So on your master output, study compression and see how it works. Study the output overall, all right? How you can add saturation to the output, add compression to the output. Study that a lot, see how it affects your sound, and see, because a lot of the things that we do nowadays, and I was talking to another guy about this as well. It was giving me the same scenario. It's about, the outputs. If you making beats, and sometimes the beat doesn't sound too cool, but if you send it through a nice output, a very warm compression, a nice EQ with a nice setting, that will change your beat. It'll make your beat pop. So I would say just study compression, because compression is going to affect your output a lot. Study mastering overall, but especially compression on your master outputs. That's really going to change how your drums feel and how your samples feel at the end. Recap real quick. My 5 tips were: simple drum loops, don't use effects, just volume, start your beats with the drums. All right. Make room for the drums when you're mixing. The drums need to be up front. That's number 4. And number 5, study the outputs. Study compression. All right. Those are my 5 tips. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And I'll see you on the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Give a thumbs up, comment, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.